So there was once, they say that when Putin first became president, right, when he was first elected, so it says every single day he was so happy, so feeling on top of the world, that he's amazing. I'm president of Mother Russia. It says every day he would wake up in the morning, and he says his first day of office he wakes up, he looks at the sun as it's rising in the east, and he says to the sun, he says, "Who do you love most? Who do you love most?" So the sun says, Putin. I love Putin the most. What do you mean? Amazing. Midday comes noon. He's in the Kremlin. He looks out the window. He looks back up at the sun, right in the middle of the sky. He says, "Sun, who do you love most?" So the sun says, "I love Putin." Comes the end of the day, sunset. He's about to head out, to have a dinner at home. He goes to the sun. He says, "So, sun, who do you love most?" So he says, "Who do I love most? I love the President of the United States." So he's like, "I don't understand what happened." He says, "Now I just said in the West. In the West, you can't control how I think." So the class is called To Be A Mensch, right? And like we said last week, is that the rabbis never said how to be a mensch. They never said do this, right? There's no 10 commandments of being a mensch. What they did was they saw that as the temple was destroyed and the Jews were becoming more assimilated, they needed a small handbook of philosophy, a small handbook of ideas that if you just learn these ideas, guaranteed you'll be a good person. So this stuff that we're learning was written 2,500 years ago by rabbis. Each rabbi was a leader of the generation. So let's say there was the leader right after the temple was destroyed. He wrote one idea. The next rabbi, another idea. And for hundreds of years, these ideas built up until it was compiled. And we have the ethics of our fathers, the Pirkei Avot. So last week we covered the first chapter. There's 6 chapters in total. We're not going to cover the rest of it today. We're going to run through chapters 2 and chapters 3. But I think what's beautiful is that there's not one specific idea that the rabbis say, do this. But they say, we'll philosophize about this, we'll hear a story about that, in the end, we'll be good people. A little more background for chapter 2. Welcome, Elizabeth. A little more background for chapter 2 is that chapter 2 begins when the rabbis saw that the Jews were starting to do well financially. So the leaders had to give them more of a push to stay connected to the heritage, to Jewish ideas, to Jewish morals, Jewish ethics. So you'll see how in chapter 2 and chapter 3, a lot of the ideas presented are a little bit harsh. And as generations pass, harshness doesn't work, right? In our generation, you can't slap a kid. You slap a kid, he's not gonna listen to you. You have to talk to him. He has to understand. It has to be through love and understanding. So that's eventually the last chapters of the ethics of our fathers. In these chapters, there's still a lot of reliance that the Jews believed in God, but they needed a little strong reminder. So you'll see that's the tone of everything that's going on. So with that being said, page 273.
I just want to make it mute. I don't want anybody.
Sure. So everyone, page 273. We'll go around. Everyone will have an opportunity to read something in English. We'll start with my right. With Mark, you'll read until the first one is very long, so you'll read on page 273 until the end of 273. There's a large period. Okay?
Under chapter 2?
Chapter 2, exactly.
Okay, so starting with number 1 under Rabbi?
Absolutely. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said.
Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said, "Which is the right path that a man should choose for himself? That which is honorable to himself and brings him honor from men. Be as careful in the performance of a seemingly minor mitzvah as of a major one, for you do not know the reward given for the mitzvot. Consider the loss incurred in the performance of a mitzvah against the reward earned by its observance. and the gain derived from a sin against the loss that will follow.
Beautiful.
Reflect.
Right until there.
Stop there. Okay.
Right until there, beautiful, because it's a long one, split in half. So Rabbi says that what is the proper path that a person should find for himself? He says, choose a path in life that is honorable for yourself and others. A lot of times, we find a success, we find a path that works for us, as long as we put down everyone else in our life. We put down our family members, we step upon members of the community, whether, ethically in business. So the rabbis say, long term, you want to have a decent life, choose a path that works for you and works for others. So you might say, but I have an easy win. Yeah, it's not always easy to consider others in our growth, in our success, but ultimately, that's the best way to go forward in life. This is very interesting. The rabbis say, during this time, remember, you can imagine where the Jewish people were after the destruction of the temple. So the rabbis say, be careful with a small mitzvah, just as big as a large mitzvah. An interesting idea, because we don't know how big or large a mitzvah is in the eyes of God. Ultimately, every mitzvah is an act of a relationship with God, right? So if someone's married to a person, so they say, you know what? I'll just do the big things. I'll pay the mortgage. You want me to also come home for dinner? Who cares? Food is food. You want me also to speak to you once a week? What? You need words? I'm paying a mortgage, and you want words, right? So in the eyes of God, every mitzvah, we don't know what's more important to Him. Sometimes we say, oh, the mortgage is important, Shabbat is important, don't kill is important, but, something small like, putting a mezuzah on my door to learn Torah once a week, right? This is small stuff. We don't know what's big and what's small in the eyes of God and what He values in the relationship, right? How many women would rather sleep in their parents' house but have their husbands actually give them a little bit of attention? They don't need the mortgage. There was once a quick story, in the year 1502. There was a man who was placed into prison, right? It's a very fascinating story. He's put into prison, and the person that incarcerated him said, listen, you're a Jew. You obviously are never getting out, but I'll cut you a break. I see you're a pious man, and all you care about is God. So this is what I'm going to do for you. Choose one day a year. Once for the rest of your life, I'm going to let you go home to perform your rituals. What day of the year do you want to go back to your community? Great question, The guy's like, wow, I have one day for the rest of my life. There's only one time. What day would we choose? Right? Many of us would be like, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, no question about it. Hanukkah, Passover, right? You have one window for the rest of your life. Choose any day of the calendar. So he wrote a letter to the rabbi at the time. His name was the Radvaz. And he asked the Radvaz, he's like, Rabbi, I can't make this decision myself. This is beyond me. For the rest of my life, one day to do a mitzvah. So the Radvaz wrote him very simply. He says, the day you should choose to come out is the nearest possible date that you could get out. If that's tomorrow, let it be tomorrow. Because it's not for us to decide what God wants us to do for Him. What mitzvah, like He gets turned on by Yom Kippur services. He gets turned on by Jews caring about Him and doing a mitzvah, simply a mitzvah. Because that's what a mitzvah is. So choose the next possible day, take the opportunity, go home and put on tefillin. Go home and make a blessing on kosher food. End of story, go back to prison for the rest of your life. This is in 1502. You understand? This is the issues the Jews were struggling with. So where does the clarity of the Radvaz come from? From already, 50 CE. The rabbis are already discussing, don't make decisions what's a big mitzvah, what's a small mitzvah, what we should consider, what we should not consider. Beautiful. Second half of the first saying, on bottom page 273. Take it away, Elizabeth. Reflect. The last word. Reflect. Then you read to the end.
Okay. Reflect upon three things and you will not come to sin. Know what is above you, an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all your deeds are recorded in a book.
Amazing. This is fascinating stuff. The foundations of society is not to do things because a policeman is there, right? So many of us say, oh, the cops are not here, I can do whatever I want, right? We educate our children, sadly, we say, you'll be punished, make sure no one's looking, whatever it is. Ultimately, why should a person not steal an item off of a shelf? Right? Today, there's no laws anymore. So people are stealing off the shelves. When I was younger, I grew up in a home where these ideas were don't steal because God doesn't want you to steal. So I remember when I was younger, most of my friends were not Jewish because I grew up here in the mountains. So we used to go skateboarding. So we once went to the Glen Center on Beverly Glen skateboarding. So I had a friend who was like 3 years older than me. So we would skateboard, we would play video games. So we're in the marketplace, the old one's not there anymore. And I remember we're checking out, and I see he takes a pack of gum and he puts it in his pocket. He walks out. So I went to him, I said, yo, what are you doing? You gotta pay for it. So he's like, Mendy, he's like, everyone shoplifts. Get used to it, you know what I'm saying? They didn't see me. So I remember telling him, but who cares about if people do it, if people catch you, God doesn't want us to steal. I don't understand, it's just not yours, why are you taking it, right? So this is the mind of a young 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid that the rabbis were saying that what's going to be for the future of the Jewish people is we can't rely on punishment about going to the temple and bringing offerings and being flogged. No, none of that. A child and an adult should always recognize that there's an eye that sees everything, a concept that only today we understand with security cameras. Everything is seen by God. There's an ear that hears everything, right? Even in our bedrooms, God sees, God hears. It doesn't work that way. And all of our deeds are written and recorded in a book. The idea is bringing physical analysis of a spiritual concept that I have a relationship with God, and good and bad is defined by Him, not what is written or employed by the police. Very nice. Next, number 2. Number 2.
Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Judah Anasi, said, "It is good to combine the study of Torah with an occupation, for the effort required by them both keeps sin out of mind. While all Torah study not combined with work will in the end cease and leads to sin. All who occupy themselves with the affairs of the community shall be engaged with them for the sake of heaven, for the merit of their Father, assist them, and their righteousness endures forever. And upon you, says God, I will bestow great reward, as though you had accomplished it all by yourself."
Amazing stuff. So the rabbis here say that Torah learning goes best when you have a job. Right? Why? Shouldn't we just learn Torah the whole day? So we say no. The greatest combo is to work and to study. Because when we have less time, we accomplish more, and also we don't have time to be involved in bad things. So if someone just sits and spends the whole 24 hours a day studying, they're not, there's a lot of opportunity for his mind to wander and get involved in things that are not necessarily the best. So God says, the rabbis say, get a job and study. Go to work, and when you're done working, go sit and study Torah.
But this conflicts with what people do in Israel, where they just go and they learn all day.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Some religious do that.
Exactly.
So how does that work?
So we need to get a little context of where this comes from. If we know the rabbis that this came from, we can understand why they said what they said. Rabbi Gamliel was the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was the leader right after the temple was destroyed. So he was connected to the great times. Mm-hmm. He was like the conduit from good times to exile. So he would tell people, study all day. Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, was the next leader. So he said, his innovation was, we can't anymore study all day because we're not on that spiritual status. So he said, in order to stay away from sin, also get a job. So how do people do it today? So number one is, we're talking about a time when people were expected to study all day. Today, only a select 1% of the Jewish world feel that they are, spiritually capable of accomplishing this. So today it's not such a worry because, how many people have you met in the last 365 days that told you, oh, by the way, all...
Rabbi Hanasi, what is in studying all day? It's not like you're doing research work and you're going to find new stuff.
You're memorizing, I think.
So first of all, it says Ein Beis Medrash She'ein Chiddush. I forgot the exact thing, which basically means there's no study hall that doesn't have Chiddush, ingenuity, innovation. When a person sits and studies, I promise you, if we sat here and studied, even this, we would come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. It's sometimes, we only tune into Torah for an hour a day, an hour a week, an hour a month. But when you start getting into it, you have innovation. And even without innovation, it's a lifetime to learn the whole Torah.
Those days, studying means studying Torah only. There wasn't anything else to study on those days.
Everything we have today, they had then. It was only they knew it by heart.
Yeah, it was the Torah.
No, they had Torah, they had Talmud, they had Mishnah, they had Jewish law, they had mysticism, they had Zohar, they had everything. Everything we have today, they had. They just didn't. It wasn't in written form, because they were actually much smarter than we are today. In modern society, we like to believe that as generations go further, there's more of a progression and we're wiser and smarter. But if you actually look at the way Jewish history is, the greatest minds that ever lived in the past. The sharpest heads, the biggest giants. And on the contrary, as time goes on, we have less capacity. How many people alive today even know one portion in the Torah by heart? Our minds just became mush, right? But if you go back in time, a guy could rattle off the whole Torah. These Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Hillel, these guys could meditate for days. Their capacity was ginormous, so they had a lot to study. Everything we study today is just the minutia of what has been kept and handed down from back then.
The other issue is that they didn't have light. They didn't have electricity then, so you naturally were limited to times when you had sunlight. So you had to, even if you were working half a day and studying half a day, or even studying all day, you still had to only depend on the amount of time that, unless you're reading by candlelight, which candles were very few and depending on your wealth status, you still only had a limited time of the day naturally to study.
Even most people sitting around the table, you'll tell your grandchildren that there was once a time when you knew everyone's numbers. Everyone in your life, you knew their cell phone numbers.
Sure.
Today, most people don't even know their own cell phone number. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm already that mid-generation, but a lot of people tell me that they themselves forgot. Like, I used to know everyone's number. I used to know my cousin, I used to know my best friend's number, and it's just, my brain can't even, it's a non-starter. So if you knew numbers, which are random digits, if you lived 2,000 years ago, you knew the whole Siddur, you knew all the prayers, you didn't need something to read, you just rattled it off. So they had a lot to learn. Number 3.
Be wary of those in power, for they befriend a person only for their own benefit. They seem to be friends when it is their advantage, but they do not stand by a man in his hour of need. Yeah, that's true.
So we're dealing with the Jewish people, literally the generation after the destruction of the temple. So what's the natural thing? What do Jews do after destruction? Let's become buddy-buddy with every person that has a seat on an HOA, every person that's some tier 4 politician. We need to know people to be able to get what we need. To survive. So Rabbi Gamliel says to the Jewish people, number 1, not saying it's a bad thing, but just recognize that in the time of need, when you need what you need, that person's going to think about their own intentions. So there's a rabbi, this is common throughout all of Jewish history. Wait, excuse me, the beer. In 1825, there was a rabbi by the name of the Malbin. He lived around Paris, and he needed a favor from the politicians in Paris. So he asked his mayor, which he's been very close with, he says, could you please write me a referral letter? I'm going to go travel. I'm going to give the next town in Paris, the politicians, your referral letter. The mayor says to the Rabbi, for you, anything. What do you mean? We're best friends. So he writes a letter, seals it with wax. They send it to the town over. The Malvin starts traveling with a student to get what they need from Paris. When he gets there, right before he gets out of the carriage, he remembers this passage from Rabbi Gamliel. He says, don't rely on people. Ultimately rely on God. So he takes the letter and he tears it up. And he goes in without the letter. So the student is like, the rabbi's nuts. And I'm saying, we made it all the way here. So while the rabbi's upstairs in the office, he pieces together the letter just to see. So he finds that the mayor of the town they went to literally wrote a letter to the politicians in Paris not to work at all with the Malbin, and his ways and the ways of his people are not the ways that we're looking for, and basically just throw him out of the office. The Malbin ended up getting what he wanted, what he needed for the community, but it's a story that's sadly very common of work with politicians. It doesn't say don't work, but recognize ultimately where does our safety come from? It comes from Hashem in heaven. Number 4.
Be used to say, fulfill his will as you would your own will, so that he may fulfill your will as though it was his will. Set aside your will because of his will, so that he may set aside the will of others before your will. Hillel said, do not separate yourself from the community. Do not be sure of yourself until the day you die. Do not condemn your fellow man until you have stood in his place. Do not make an ambiguous statement which is not readily understood in the belief that it will ultimately be understood. And do not say, when I will have free time, I will study, for perhaps you will never have free time.
Amazing. Each one is fire. Each one could go on a coffee mug in some Santa Barbara store. So Rabbi Gamliel would say, make your will the will of God, and then he'll make his will your will. Something that Hillel says, which has lasted many generations and is constantly used within the Jewish community to regulate the way things are, is Al Tifrish min hatzibur. Do not separate yourself from the community, which is a very powerful idea. Is sometimes we have to recognize the power of community. Right? It doesn't say don't be a leader. It doesn't say don't make innovation. But Al Tifrish min hatzibur, if you have an idea to bring ambulances to a neighborhood, first try to work with the pre-existing ambulance society. Don't excommunicate yourself from the community and saying, I'm doing my own thing, I'm having my own ambulances. When we work together as a community, that's when we're the most powerful. Do not judge a friend until you're standing in his shoes. Obviously, this is so powerful. Today I was in Costco, and I was actually thinking about the class, and in my head I knew that we were going to get to this thing. What was I thinking about? That there was 2 people that were with their carts, and you could see that they were aggravated with each other. One was not moving fast enough. The other one was trying to get around. The person just was come on, But they didn't have the vantage point to realize that one person had a full wagon of Costco stuff. So one person just rolls into Costco, completely agile with the cart, and saying, I could go, woof, let's move, let's just go around each other. But for the other person to move, you know what it means to move a full cart with water and melons and everything in Costco? It's literally your whole body. It's like a 16-wheeler truck, right? Sometimes in life, we look at people and we say, what's your problem? Move. Get your life together. Pick up your pants and, move to the left, move to the right, make a decision. But we don't all have the same shopping cart, right? Some people have a lot of heavy items, a lot of trauma, a lot of childhood things that are holding them up. Some people, they just got the wrong deck of the cards, a lot of failure after failure after failure. So for them to move the cart, Don't judge them so fast. A little patience. Okay, so you can move your cart fast. God bless you. There's not so much rocks and packages in your cart. Right? But definitely, let's not judge people before we're standing and we're pushing their cart, we're standing in their place. And ultimately, a person shouldn't say that when I have free time, I'm going to study Torah, because we never know how much free time we have left. Right? Basics. There's one, yeah.
It says, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
It says, do not be sure of yourself until the day you die. Does that mean stubbornness?
Yeah. Do not be so confident in yourself and in your successes and in your self-development, your character development, until the day you die. Meaning, it's not like, oh, I'm 55, I did pretty well for myself. I have my name on a building over there. I have people that smile to me when I walk over there. I'm good. I'm good. I don't need to think about growth. I'm just going to cruise until the grave. Right? What else do you want from me? So Rabbi's like, guys, until you're in the grave, there's work to be done.
You could always be better.
Always be better. Don't be so confident in yourself until it's over. So there was once there's a beautiful story of a rabbi in 1730. He was from Jablin, his town of Jablin, and he once saw that a Jew broke Shabbos by mistake. So he went to the Baal Shem Tov, and he asked the Baal Shem Tov, he's crying, he's like, I can't believe I broke Shabbos. Like, I can't believe, I need some type of tikkun, some type of rectification. So Baal Shem Tov said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to take candles every week and bring it to the synagogue. You're going to supply the Shabbos candles. And since you're involved in the mitzvah of Shabbos, you're supporting the mitzvah of Shabbos and helping other people do the mitzvah of Shabbos, through that there's going to be your rectification for the one time you made a mistake in Book Shabbos. So this Rabbi of Jablin, he overheard what's going on, and he said, seriously, a guy breaks Shabbos. Times of the temple, he would have been stoned. And you're letting him off the hook by bringing some wax to the synagogue? It's not enough. You could do much more than that, right? So this guy, this poor Jew that broke Shabbos, so he started bringing candles. The first week, a dog comes into synagogue, eats the candles. Can't be used. Second week, he lights the candles. Before Shabbos came in, they were already gone. Right? Sometimes the wax just flies. So he's like, God is literally not accepting this repentance. So he goes to the Baal Shem Tov and he's crying. He says, I can't bear this anymore. I'm trying. I feel so bad. But clearly, God's not happy with this arrangement. So Baal Shem Tov says, no, this has nothing to do with God. He says, clearly someone in the community is upset that this is your path to return to God. So eventually he calls in this Jablin guy. And he tells him, I want you to do a mission for me. Go to the next town, get something and bring it back right before Shabbos. Okay? Goes to the next town. As he's coming back, the nature of the mission was he only had a few minutes to make it in time for Shabbos. The horses are acting up. He's trying to go fast to make it time to the Baal Shem Tov. Sun's going down. He starts freaking out. I'm about to break Shabbos. Right? I have literally 5 minutes left, and it takes me 5 minutes. I'm going to be coming in literally within the seconds. Mm-hmm. He's crying to Hashem. Finally, he makes it moments before Shabbos. Makes it back. He's a wreck, emotional disaster. He goes to the Baal Shem Tov. He says, I delivered the thing. Here's whatever you need. So he says, but I can't. He says, this was too much for me. I got so close to breaking Shabbos. So the Baal Shem Tov told him, he says, recognize that it's so easy to judge another Jew because you never broke Shabbos. Right? So you're standing on this high hill saying, this Jew broke Shabbos? How is it possible? Impossible. The guy should be killed. You were just one wrong turn with a horse to breaking Shabbos. And look at you. You're ready to repent. You're ready to do anything. This Jew really wanted to repent. Don't judge how his heart brings him closer to God. You were just never in his place.
Just another question about this comment, a line about being not being sure of yourself. Could that be interpreted as saying have humility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's in line with the common interpretation. You know, don't be over pompous with your accomplishments. Number 5.
He used to say, a boor cannot be sin-fearing, nor can an ignoramus be a Hasid, one who does more than the strict letter of the law requires. The bashful person cannot learn, neither can the short-tempered teach, nor can anyone who is much occupied in trade become a scholar. And in a place where there are no men, strive to be a man.
Amazing. Amazing. Ein bar yirachet, someone who, is an ignoramus, anyone who has no understanding, no intellect, ultimately can't fear sin because they don't even know of sin. They never learned about sin. It says, V'lei bai shen lamed. I heard this my whole childhood. My whole childhood, every teacher in Cheder when I was growing up, they said in the beginning of every year, V'lei bai shen lamed means someone who's embarrassed will never learn. What does it mean? If you're embarrassed, you can't learn. Why? A person has to be able to have enough confidence to ask a question. If we're too embarrassed to ask a question, V'lei bai shen lamed. If you don't ask, you're not going to learn. We're too embarrassed to ask, we can't learn. So the rabbis always say, guys, every kid this year needs to ask questions. Lo yabai shalamid. That's number one. V'lo hakapta melamnid, which means someone who's quick to anger, someone who has no patience, cannot be a teacher. This is like fundamental for being a teacher. If you don't have patience, it's not going to work out. There was once a story of a rabbi that had a student. This student was, his brain was like a rock. Nothing went in. So every time he taught him, it took 400 times. Just the kid would walk around the room and he would just repeat it and repeat it. And after 400 times, it went in. So one time they're studying, and what happens? The teacher, someone comes into the room and says to the rabbi and says, right when you're done with this class, we need you somewhere else. So the rabbi's like, okay, I got it. We'll do it fast. We'll finish up. 400 rounds go by, and the guy tests him. The kid doesn't know it. So the rabbi goes to the kid and says, how come you don't know it? We just did 400 times. So he says, I'll be honest with you. The second I saw that you're rushing to go to the next thing, my brain turned off. It didn't work because I'm like, you're rushing. You don't have the patience. You want me to finish. Even though we usually do this and it works, it no longer works for me. A fascinating story. So someone who is easily loses patience shouldn't be a teacher. And obviously in a place where there's no leaders, if there's no men, be a man. Right? We shouldn't wait for people to decide when things need to get done. If you see an issue in the community, if you see an issue in the world, don't wait, make it happen. Number 6, that's me. He also saw, this is interesting, he also saw a skull floating on the water. He said to it, because you drowned others, they drowned you. And ultimately, those who drowned you will themselves be drowned. What does this mean? The guy sees a skull floating in the river. And he says to the skull, because you, meaning when the skull was alive, when you were alive, you drowned people. Therefore, you were drowned. And the people that drowned you will eventually also be drowned. So it's an endless chain of people being drowned. Does that make sense? So what are the rabbis teaching us? That whenever we put a negative energy into the world, right? If someone says, I'm going to chop this guy's head off. So ultimately, everything comes around. Ultimately, you chop someone else's off, someone's going to chop your head off. What happens in reality, not reality, but the concept. You're floating in the river because you drowned someone. Now you're floating in the river, drowned. And one day, the guy who drowned you is also going to be drowned. Everything comes around. Now, I'm about to take this idea and apply it to something that's semi-connected, but I think it's very powerful because it's something I've been dealing with in the last few weeks in the community. There was once a story of a guy, a very wealthy man, made it very far in business, but his father didn't make it. His father was a pauper, and he always looked down at his father. He says, "You never made it. You never wanted me to be successful. You're the worst father in the world. So I'm not going to give you anything. You're going to live as a homeless the rest of your life." Fine. One day, the grandfather is freezing in the synagogue. Freezing. Right? It's a cold winter night. And the grandson, the rich man's son, comes to synagogue to pray. And he walks in and he sees his grandfather shivering in the back. So he goes to the grandfather. He says, are you okay? You're not feeling well? Can I help you? So he says, do me a favor. Go to your father, right? Go to my son and ask him for a coat. I need a coat. I can't. It's not going to work this way. I'm freezing to death over here. So he says, sure. So he runs home. He says, Zaidi needs a coat. He's freezing. He's getting sick in the synagogue. So the father says, of course he's getting sick. It's good for nothing. He says, go to the attic. You'll find a coat there and bring it to him. Goes to the attic and he finds a coat with holes, cut, tattered. Obviously can't help him with the rain. So the grandson didn't like this. He's like, this doesn't taste like the right thing to do. So he took scissors and he cut the coat in half. So he comes, he's holding two things. He says, okay, Daddy, I'm going to give the coat to... So he says, well, what are you doing? Why'd you cut the coat in half? So he says, this coat, I have to honor my father. I'm going to give to your father, Zaidi, grandpa, because you said I should bring the coat. And he says, the other half, I'm saving for when you're older and you need help. This is the coat that I'm going to give you. Recently, and it happens often, a lot of times when people, sadly, they get divorced for whatever reason it is. So a lot of times people, they pin the children against parents. They say, let me tell you something about your mother. Your mother, she's the worst of the worst. She's the reason why we got divorced. You want to know why you're not happy? You want to know why you have no friends? You want to know why you're always changing schools? It's your mother. And what does the mother say? Your father is abusive. The amount of language that's told to the kids, like, this parent is evil, that parent, don't give them a coat, don't give them anything. But the short-sightedness is that a child eventually sees, so there's a possibility that someone could treat a spouse this way. I could treat a parent this way. All circumstances taken for. What parents don't realize is one day the child's going to say, I remember when you told me that mother was what she was and you spat in her face. And when I get older, I realized that no one spits in people's face. And I'm going to treat you the same way you taught me to treat loved ones. When a skull is floating in the river, it's an endless cycle. It's our job to break the chain and to make sure that we don't get caught in the endless cycle of traumas and unhealthy relationships. Very nice. Number 7.
He used to say, increasing flesh increases worms in the grave. Increasing possessions increases worry. Increasing the number of wives increases sorcery. Increasing maidservants increases lewdness. Increasing manservants increases thievery. But increasing Torah increases life. Increasing assiduous study increases wisdom. Increasing counsel increases understanding. Increasing charity increases peace. One who has acquired a good name has acquired it for himself. One who has acquired for himself Torah knowledge has acquired for himself life in the world to come.
Amazing. So what the rabbis are basically doing here, Rabbi Gamliel, he's trying to tell the Jewish people that all the things you're working so hard for, maybe is not in your best interests. You're working for all those possessions. I want 3 houses, 1 in every city. I want a yacht. I want this. I want that. I want all the cars, which are naturally good things to understand. But anyone that's been there recognizes that more possessions equals more headaches. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a certain threshold where it's doing you good, and then it's destroying. More wives, it says it uses sorcery, but what it means is people just constantly trying to get into your head, to try to use anything necessary to get you to care about them. So you want to marry 30 wives? No problem, marry 30 wives, but just recognize that each one is working to find any possible way to get you to only want them, which probably will end up in a headache. But when a person learns Torah, it adds life. When a person has more wisdom and seeks advice, these are things that are only beneficial, right? It's not like, too much knowledge, too much Torah is gonna have a bad side effect. And obviously, the more tzedakah a person gives, the more peace and blessing it brings into the world. And ultimately, it says that a person that acquires a good reputation is good. It's very good. It's very healthy. And we spoke last week about good reputations. Very, very positive. But that's something that ends in the grave. But Torah and mitzvah lasts forever, forever, forever. You know, the Rebbe, when people ask about real estate, getting into the real estate business, the Rebbe would always say that if you're a beginner in real estate, so a lot of times there's markets where you make a large, like right now it's like in the last few years you hear buying Dallas, buying Atlanta, buying wherever. You know, that's where the numbers are. So the Rebbe would tell people, if you're starting in real estate, start local. Start in a place where you could drive to see your properties. Because if you're worried in your head about an extra 3% in a state that you have to get on a plane for, then then adding your possessions didn't bring you the life you're looking for. So you write to many people, you're getting into real estate, your first deals should be somewhere that you could drive to and make an easy visit if it's necessary.
Which real estate rabbi said that?
I said the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Oh, okay.
The Rebbe would tell people, if you're going into real estate, you should actually know that in the 80s and 90s, we didn't understand this at the time. The Rebbe talked multiple times about people to buy their homes and to buy tons of real estate. And the Hasidim, the followers that did that, they're like, we wrote to the Rebbe, like, you spoke about buying real estate. So I just have a regular job. They would say, like, take out loans. Rebbe said the future stability of the community will be when the community has this large handle on real estate. So it was a fascinating time where the Rebbe was literally pushing people that were regular teachers in a public school thing, and said, borrow from family, whatever it is, long term, now's the time. And he convinced so much of the community.
Smart.
You know, people needed the faith to make that jump, because who was buying real estate in the 80s? Especially the interest rates, whatever. So you go back. But
Chabad has done very well in buying real estate.
It seems so. It seems so. One day I'll be able to join the club. I'm just the beginning of my life, but one day. So now we're going to move forward to the next chapter. So everyone skip to page, chapter number 3.
What page is that? Oh, I got it.
Chapter number 3, page 277.
Yeah.
You should know that the 5th Chabad Rebbe, he said that God desired, not to take too much time on this, but we're talking about real estate. He says that God desired that he should have a home in this world, the temple, right? Mm-hmm. So it says, since we're created in the image of God, so then there's one desire that's beyond like intelligence, embedded in every human being, which is to have their own home.
Mm-hmm. Pyramid of needs.
You understand? So this is in the 1825. He's giving talks about make sure that you're not renting for the rest of your life, because there's something that embedded in the serenity of man. The ultimate serenity is when it's yours. Fine. With that being said, who's next for number 1 of chapter 3?
Number 1.
Number 1.
Akaida ben Mahalel said, reflect upon 3 things and you will not come to sin. Know from where you came and to where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give an accounting. From where you came, from putrid rock, and where you are going, to a place of dust, maggots and worms, right? And before whom you are destined to give an accounting, before the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He.
Amazing. So, like I said, chapter 2 and 3 is a lot of things that are a little bit of a darker tone, and the rabbis felt at that time this is the only way to keep the Jewish people of those generations, focused. And if we fast forward 1800 years, comes the Baal Shem Tov, he ended up saying that those generations are behind us, and we have to only talk positive messaging. But I think since the rabbis encoded these, it's still something that we could appreciate today. What are these concepts? Look at 3 things. You'll never do a sin. What it means, look at these 3 things. You don't have to look. It means keep them in the front of your head. Is know ma'ayin basa. Where do we come? We come from a little sperm, right? So you're the greatest. You have the most followers on all the social media platforms. Every time you go into a restaurant, they pull a seat for you. You don't even have to pay. At the end of the day, we all come from a little thing of sperm. You know what I'm saying? How great, things to keep ourselves humble. And where are we going to? Everyone's going to the same place. One thing that we are guaranteed in this life, right, is taxes and death. And the last one is that ultimately every single person is one day going to have to give an account in the courts above about all the things that they did or they did not do in their life. You know, this time of the Jewish people was also a time when people were involved in a lot of business. They were becoming very successful. So there was a famous story of a wealthy man that was completely wealthy, like absolutely the mogul of his town. And what happened is that the kids, all they cared about was money. He had a humble education. He had ethics and morals. But the kids, they grew up around the real estate talk, you know what I'm saying? They're like numbers, dollars, cents, you know, everyone's disposable. So they didn't have the morals and the ethics. All they cared about was served was money. It hurt the father so much that all the kids cared about was money. So he said that right before I die, I'm writing a will. And I have 2 wills, 2 envelopes. This you write the day I die. This you open the day I die. And this you open a month after I die. But promise me you're not going to open them both the same day. Okay? Kids say, whatever you want. You know, we're going to get your money anyways. Whatever makes you happy. So the day he dies, heart stops pumping. The Chevra Kadisha come to take the body to prepare for burial. This family, all the siblings gather around. They say, Daddy left us an envelope. First envelope, open it up. What does it say? It says, to my dear children, I love you like nothing in this world. Do me one favor. Is that bury me, you'll find in my top drawer, a pair of socks that were from my father. Bury me with this pair of socks. That's all I ask. One request. The kids are like, weird. You know, well, this is what he wants. We'll make it happen. You know? So they go with the pair of socks. They run to the Chevra Kadisha, to where they're preparing the body, and they say to the rabbis, Rabbi, just add this pair of socks to my dad. The rabbi's like, no, nothing. You don't add. There's no socks. We're not allowed to bury them with anything. There's no clothes allowed. It's like, excuse me, this is my father's dying wish. I said you're going to add socks to the body. The rabbi said, absolutely not. We're not adding. It's impossible. It's not allowed. So the kid said, do you know who sponsors the cemetery? Do you know who pays all the salaries around here? Are you seriously not going to put a pair of socks? And they went nuts. The father's dying wish. They threatened the community. They said, we'll buy the whole cemetery. We'll buy it. Everyone said, there's nothing we can do. Eventually, the father's buried. 30 days later, they open up the second letter. The second letter reads, the father tells the kids and says, my dear children, I'm sure by this time you realize that you can't bury me with a pair of socks. And I hope you recognize that no matter how much money we amass in this world, can't even bring a pair of socks with you to the world to come. Make sure that you use everything I left you wisely with the right priorities. A timeless story. Timeless story. That being said, we'll do a few more. Let's skip to number 10. Number 10 found on page 79. 279. Yusuf. 279.
He used to say, anyone whose good deeds exceed his wisdom will endure. But anyone whose wisdom exceeds his good deeds, his wisdom will not endure. He used to say, anyone with whom his fellow men are pleased, God is pleased with him. But anyone with whom his fellow men are not pleased, God is not pleased with him. Rabbi Joseph ben Harkina said, the sleep of the late morning, wine at midday, children's prattle, I don't know what that means, and sitting in the gathering places of the ignorant drive a man from the world.
Amazing, amazing. So number one, it says that Chachmasei which means that anyone whose wisdom is more than their deeds, the wisdom won't last. Sometimes, especially in modern Jewish culture, is we spend a lot of time saying, listen, I'm not going to do a mitzvah. Don't ask me to do a mitzvah. But you want to give me some wisdom? Oh, wisdom. No action. Already 2,000 years ago, the rabbis sensed that this was going to become a thing. So they said, recognize that wisdom without practice, eventually all the wisdom disappears. It's like a passing through. It's passing through.
You may replace the word wisdom with knowledge, perhaps.
Yeah, I would say
because we're in the internet world. Where,
you're saying it's not really wisdom.
Where my children, let's say, will say that anything you want to know is technically available. All knowledge is essentially available on the internet, and so I'm just suggesting that if you replace the word wisdom here with knowledge, I think it also makes sense.
Right, which is, like you said, the crisis of wisdom in our generation. Absolutely.
So you're saying that even though knowledge is available, if it's not acted upon, it's worthless?
No. Animus kayemis. It's not going to last. No one's saying it's not worthless. Animus kayemis is not going to last. And also, when it comes to education, this is very, very important. And this is something that the Rabbi realized, and this is why people get harassed by Chabad. Chabad's all about understanding, right? Chachma ibn Adas, intellect, understanding. So we're all about asking questions and delving and deeping and delving. But when you meet a Chabad guy for the first time, there's no intellect, there's only action. He'll be like, oh, put on tefillin. Oh, Shabbos candles. Oh, let's go out for a kosher meal. Why? Because ultimately, and this is how it is with education for children, is a person could talk to a kid about Jewish values, Jewish pride, Judaism. But if the kids never saw practice in the home, if there's no action, everything is like water just passing through a pipe and it's gone. What retains Judaism in people, in society, is literally practice. If a kid grows up seeing a mother lighting Shabbos candle, a father making kiddush, going to synagogue, tefillin, anything, or like we eat kosher in the home, maybe out of the home, those things are retaining the few drops of wisdom for the rest of the life, more than a guy who's most wise parents, no practice, it's like it's gone, as if it never happened. And then obviously, which is interesting, we'll have to get a live stream of what was happening in that generation, but sleeping in the morning, drinking wine in the middle of the day, childish, immature conversations, and sitting with street gatherers, ignorant people, drives a person from the world. Okay? I think we won't disagree with that. Last one, number 14.
This Perky Avod comes from Talmud. Where is the source?
It's predates Talmud. It's before Talmud.
Is it before?
Page number 280, number 14. Yitzchak.
He used to say, "Beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. It is even a greater love that it was made known to him that he was created in the image of God, as it is stated, for in the image of God he made man. Beloved are the people Israel, for they are called children of God. It is even a greater love that it was made known to them that they are called children of God. As it is said, you are the children of the Lord, your God. Beloved are the people Israel, for a precious article was given to them. It is even a greater love that it was made known to them that they were given a precious article, as it is said, I have given you a good teaching. Do not forsake my Torah.
Amazing. The fact that God created us in His image means He loves us.
Yeah.
The fact that He told us means He really loves us. Beautiful, huh? Everything we know. That you're the chosen people, okay, he didn't have to tell us. He tells us because he loves us. Right? Someone could be married. By the way, the famous joke, whatever, not a joke, it's not so funny, but guys always say, like, what's your problem? You have a ring on your finger. That's a sign that I love you. You know, it's like, what do you need from me already? The fact that we're married. No, that's good. But saying it as well is like, you actually love me today. So God is like, yes, we're married. But he keeps saying, Anna, you're my chosen people, you're my beloved people, you're my everything. You're the only thing I care about in this world. I want to close by sharing that the love Hashem has for the Jewish people is immeasurable. God literally loves every single Jewish person, every person in general, but definitely every single Jew. And not just that, there could be many children in a family, right? But, you know, we do business with the oldest. The oldest gets the most attention. Who's talking about the after-death plans? The oldest. Maybe the oldest sister. Who's involved in the business? This one, that one. Then there's a few children that are out of it. And automatically, when they're out of it, it's like, you don't love me so much. God gave a specific mission for every single Jew. Every single person sitting around this table has a specific mission. He didn't put us into this world just to be furniture for the other siblings. He only created us because he loves us. We have a purpose, and it's our job to spend a little bit of time in saying, I'm here because he loves me, he needs me. Where's my place in the beautiful orchestra of Jewish people and making this world for a better place? And I want to close by saying that I don't know what's happening in this community. I don't know what's happening in this community. But sometimes we don't see the connected dots. We all do something good and we think that it's isolated. Nothing is isolated. Everyone that came to this class tonight, your families know you're not home for one reason. You came to a Torah class. That has an effect on the psyche, the psychology, the understanding of who you are as an individual. And then they're going to, throughout their day, subconsciously it affects them. I don't know what's happening, but in the last week, 6 families, local families, have reached out to Chabad and said, what's going on? Our kids need bar mitzvahs with the foundation of Torah. My wife needs something to be part of something Jewish, something. People that are not because of my direct. God promises that when something good happens, like the skull is for the bad, but for the positive as well. Anytime we do something good, it's a ripple effect, a ripple effect, a ripple effect. So every single person should recognize God loves each and every one of us. Everyone that came to this table, we may not know how it affects our life, but it's not just affecting our life. It's affecting our families, it's affecting our communities, and it's affecting the whole world. And I wish you all a beautiful second half to your week. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for arranging.